The autumn sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the sleepy town of Brookside. The wind whispered through the trees, rustling leaves that painted the sidewalks in hues of orange, red, and yellow. School had just let out, and children chattered excitedly as they poured from the old brick building and scattered in every direction, their backpacks bouncing and laughter ringing through the crisp afternoon air. Among them was 8-year-old Emily Carter, a petite girl with curly brown hair and bright green eyes, who was walking home with her loyal companion, a German shepherd named Rex. Rex was more than just a pet. He was Emily's protector, her friend, and her guardian. The Carters had adopted him from a shelter 3 years earlier, after hearing he'd been trained as a police dog but discharged early due to an injury. Though his limp was barely noticeable now, his training had never left him. He was sharp, attentive, and fiercely protective, especially of Emily. The two were inseparable. Every morning, Rex waited by the front door, tail wagging, eager to accompany her on the walk to school. And every afternoon, he waited at the same spot, ears perked, ready to escort her home. That particular Thursday had started like any other. Emily had spent her day drawing in art class, reading aloud in her group, and swapping snacks with her best friend Mia during lunch. The walk home was routine. They followed the sidewalk past the bakery, where the scent of cinnamon rolls made Emily's stomach growl, and then took a shortcut through Maplewood Lane, a quiet residential street lined with tall trees and old Victorian homes. Rex stayed close by her side, his leash loosely held in her small hand. Cars passed occasionally, but the neighborhood was peaceful, and Emily knew it like the back of her hand. She didn't notice the dark blue van parked farther down the road until she was halfway down the block. It wasn't a usual sight. People around here drove sedans and SUVs, and it didn't belong to any of the neighbors. The van's windows were tinted, and it sat silently, engine idling. Something about it made Rex's ears twitch. He stopped in his tracks and let out a low, nearly inaudible growl. Emily tugged gently on his leash, thinking he'd just heard a squirrel or seen a stray cat. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, patting his head, but Rex didn't move. That's when the van's sliding door cracked open and a man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in dark jeans and a black hoodie, and he kept his face partially hidden under a baseball cap. He looked around quickly, eyes darting from house to house. No one was outside. The air suddenly felt colder. Emily instinctively stepped closer to Rex, her grip on the leash tightening. The man moved fast. In a blink, he crossed the street, his strides long and purposeful. Emily's heart began to hammer in her chest. She took a step back, but the man was already upon her. "Hey there," he said, his voice smooth but forced, like he was trying too hard to sound friendly. "You lost," Emily shook her head. "No, I'm just going home." The man glanced around again. "How about I walk with you? It's not safe for little girls to be out alone." "I'm not alone," Emily said quickly, her voice trembling. "I have Rex." The man's eyes shifted to the German shepherd. For a second, he hesitated. Rex stood stiffly, his body between Emily and the stranger, his teeth bared and growl louder now. The man reached into his pocket, and Emily's instincts screamed. "Run, Rex," she yelled, but before she could take a step, the man lunged. He grabbed Emily's arm roughly and yanked her forward. She screamed, twisting and kicking, but his grip was like iron. In that instant, Rex exploded into motion. He launched himself at the attacker with a snarl that could make grown men cower. The man let go of Emily and stumbled back as Rex's jaws clamped around his forearm. He shouted in pain, swinging wildly, but Rex held on, his body tense and powerful. Emily fell to the ground, scraping her knees, but she scrambled back on her feet just in time to see Rex force the man down. The van door flung open, and another figure appeared, a second man, shorter, heavier, and just as threatening. He had something shiny in his hand, a knife. "Rex." Emily screamed, her voice cracking. Rex released the first man and turned to face the new threat. The second man approached quickly, brandishing the blade. Rex darted in and out, feinting, barking furiously, never letting him get too close to Emily. The first man staggered to his feet, cradling his bleeding arm, and shouted, "Get the girl now." Emily ran. Her backpack thudded against her back as she sprinted down the sidewalk. She didn't look back. All she heard was barking, shouting, and pounding footsteps. She ran harder, faster than she ever had in her life. Rex kept the attackers busy just long enough before breaking away and chasing after Emily. The second man lunged but missed, falling hard on the pavement. Rex caught up with her at the end of the block, and they darted through a neighbor's yard, slipping between a fence and a row of hedges. Behind them, the sound of running feet grew fainter. Emily didn't stop until she burst through her own front door, sobbing and breathless. Her mother, Karen, dropped the laundry basket she was holding and rushed to her. "Emily, what happened? What's wrong?" "Someone tried to grab me. 2 men, they had a van. Rex saved me." Karen stared at her daughter, then at Rex, who stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, a long scratch visible along his side. Panic surged through her. She grabbed the phone and called the police, voice trembling as she relayed what Emily had told her. Officers arrived within minutes. A patrol car and then a detective in an unmarked vehicle. They took Emily's statement, and a medical team examined Rex's wound. He'd been cut, but the injury wasn't deep. Emily sat next to him on the porch steps, her small hand stroking his fur gently as he licked her scraped knees. "Your dog is a hero," one officer said, crouching down to look at Rex with admiration. "He saved me," Emily whispered. "He didn't even think, he just jumped." Karen hugged her daughter tightly, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what we'd do without you," she murmured into her hair. The van was gone by the time police canvassed the neighborhood, but they found tire marks near the sidewalk and security footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera. It showed enough to confirm Emily's story. 2 men, a dark blue van, and a brief struggle. Rex's attack was clearly visible, and the footage later made the rounds on news channels and social media. By nightfall, Brookside was buzzing. Everyone was talking about the brave German shepherd who had saved a little girl from being kidnapped. Reporters showed up outside the Carters' house, though the family declined interviews at first. Karen wanted to focus on her daughter and ensure Rex got proper care. Still, the town rallied behind them. The local vet offered to treat Rex for free, and the pet store delivered a massive care package with toys, treats, and even a new bed. Emily didn't sleep that night. She stayed curled up next to Rex on the floor of her bedroom, her tiny arm draped across his broad shoulders. He didn't move, staying alert through the night, ears twitching at every sound. The events of the day had shaken them both, but their bond had only grown stronger. Detective Mark Ramirez was assigned to the case. He had seen many things in his 20 years on the force, but the loyalty and bravery displayed by that dog impressed him deeply. He paid a visit to the Carters the following morning to check on Emily and to ask a few follow-up questions. Emily recounted the story again, her voice steadier this time, though she kept one hand resting on Rex's head the entire time. "Did you see the man's face clearly?" the detective asked. Emily nodded. "He had a scar on his cheek, like this." She traced a line down her left cheek. Ramirez took notes, his expression thoughtful. "That helps a lot. You've been incredibly brave, Emily." She looked up at him. "I wasn't brave, Rex was." The detective smiled. "He certainly was, but you were smart and fast. That counts too." As the investigation unfolded, more information came to light. A similar van had been spotted in a neighboring town earlier that week, and 2 other parents reported suspicious behavior around their children. The theory that the men were part of a larger network began to form. Authorities believed the attempted kidnapping might not have been a one-off incident. Emily returned to school a few days later, and Rex became a local celebrity. He was greeted with cheers and applause whenever Karen brought him along to pick up Emily. Children lined up to pet him. The principal even announced a special hero day in his honor, but none of that seemed to matter to Rex. All he cared about was Emily, his girl, safe and smiling. What no one knew then was that the men in the van weren't done. Far from it. The failed attempt in Brookside had rattled them, and their anger simmered. They hadn't planned for a dog, especially not one trained for protection. Now they were watching, planning, waiting for another chance. And next time, they'd be ready. The days that followed felt quieter somehow, though not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that lingered in the shadows, a tension that never quite left the room. Emily still walked to school, but never alone now. Karen insisted on driving her whenever she could, and when that wasn't possible, another parent or teacher was arranged to accompany her. Rex, of course, was always there, trotting alongside with calm determination, his eyes scanning every face, every corner. His tail no longer wagged as freely as before. He was alert, vigilant, and changed. Detective Ramirez checked in regularly. He brought updates when he could, though none of them were satisfying. The van hadn't been found. The two suspects remained unidentified despite the blurry images pulled from the neighbor's security footage. The man with the scar was nowhere in the local databases, which suggested he wasn't a local. The second man had worn a hat and kept his face turned, making identification nearly impossible. Karen couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. She'd always felt safe in Brookside. It was the kind of place where you left your doors unlocked during the day, where everyone knew your name at the grocery store, and where the loudest scandal was usually about someone's garden gnome being stolen. But now every unfamiliar car that passed by made her heart race. Every time Rex growled at a passerby, her stomach turned. Emily did her best to act normal. She laughed at school, she played with Mia at recess, and she did her homework each night curled up in the living room. But there was a weight behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. She slept with her light on, and sometimes in the middle of the night, Karen would find her lying awake, whispering to Rex. "Do you think they'll come back?" She asked him one night, her voice barely above a breath. Rex gave a quiet whine and nudged his nose under her hand. It wasn't an answer, but it was enough. Then, a week after the attack, strange things began to happen. Karen noticed it first. The same black SUV parked across the street 2 days in a row. She thought it belonged to a new neighbor at first, but when she asked around, no one recognized it. Then came the phone calls, hang-ups in the middle of the night, always from a blocked number. Once, the porch light flickered off without explanation. The electrician later found nothing wrong. Ramirez listened carefully when she told him all this. "You're being targeted," he said bluntly. "I suspected it after the first attempt failed. They might not be done." Karen's hands trembled as she clutched her coffee mug. "But why Emily? Why us? We don't know yet," he said. "Some of these networks are organized. They target children based on patterns. Sometimes it's opportunity. Sometimes it's much more calculated." He offered to have a patrol car pass by the house more often. Karen agreed, but it didn't do much to ease the fear. Especially not when, 2 nights later, the SUV was seen again, this time parked closer, engine running, lights off. By the time police arrived, it was gone. Emily, meanwhile, began to withdraw. Her drawings changed, once filled with castles and butterflies, now replaced with shadows and sharp teeth. When Karen asked her about it, she shrugged. "It's just a dream I had," she said, "but Rex always saves me." The dog rarely left her side now. Even when she bathed, he waited outside the door. He slept at the foot of her bed or directly in front of her bedroom window, ears perked. He barked at the front door late at night, growled at rustling bushes, and once nearly broke the screen door chasing after something no one else saw. Then, on a grey Saturday morning, Emily vanished. It happened so quickly, no one could explain it. Karen had taken her to the park for a picnic, hoping to lift her spirits. The town's annual Harvest Fest had been cancelled for safety reasons, but some families were still out enjoying the cool weather. They brought Rex, of course. Emily fed him tiny pieces of sandwich while Karen laid out a blanket and set up their little lunch beneath the big oak tree in the center of the field. There were other children around, playing on the swings and climbing the jungle gym. Emily asked if she could join, and Karen said yes, so long as Rex went with her. He always did. For a while, everything seemed normal. Karen turned to speak with another mother she knew just for a moment. That was all it took. When she looked back toward the playground, Emily was gone, so was Rex. Panic gripped her heart like a vice. She screamed her daughter's name, running toward the swings, the slide, the trees. Nothing. Parents turned, confused, some following her with growing concern. A few helped search. Within minutes, the entire park seemed to realize something was wrong. A child missing. A dog missing. People started calling out, fanning out through the fields. Karen dialed 911 with shaking hands, nearly dropping the phone. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Every second felt like an hour. But then, out of nowhere, a scream rang out, high-pitched, terrified, and unmistakably Emily's. It came from the wooded area on the far side of the park. Without waiting, Karen sprinted, her breath tearing through her lungs. Others followed. The sound of feet pounded the earth. The trees grew thicker, the shadows deeper, until finally, through the underbrush, she saw her. Emily was running toward her, tears streaking her face, her shirt torn at the sleeve, and behind her, Rex. Blood on his muzzle, fur matted, a wildness in his eyes. He wasn't alone. He was dragging something. Karen skidded to a stop as she saw the man, face bruised, arm shredded, clothes torn, being pulled by the dog's iron grip. Rex had him by the jacket collar, teeth buried in the fabric, and he was dragging the man like he weighed nothing. Police sirens howled in the distance. People gasped. Someone took Emily into their arms. Karen couldn't move. It all happened in a blur. Officers arrived and took the man into custody. He didn't resist. He couldn't. His face was a mess of scratches and bruises, and his arm hung at an unnatural angle. Rex had done exactly what he was trained to do: defend, subdue, protect. Emily threw her arms around Rex and sobbed into his fur. "He found me," she cried. "They were taking me, but he chased them. He wouldn't stop." Karen knelt beside her, pulling both of them into her arms. It wasn't until hours later, when things had calmed and statements were taken, that the full story came out. A second van had been parked near the back entrance to the park, hidden by trees. One man had lured Emily away with a lost puppy trick. She'd hesitated, but the man had seemed familiar, maybe from the SUV. And Rex had known instantly. He attacked the man before he could grab Emily, but another attacker came from behind and tried to pull her into the van. Rex let go of the first man and flung himself at the second, giving Emily enough time to escape. He'd fought them both. Alone. Against two grown men, armed and angry, he had refused to back down. He chased them off, biting and snapping until one fell. The other fled. That's when Emily ran toward the screams she knew would lead her back to safety. Later that night, Karen sat beside Emily's hospital bed, not because she was injured badly, but because the doctors wanted to be sure she was okay. Rex lay beside her, his body stitched in 2 places and Roman 4 in his leg, but his eyes never left her face. "He's my hero," Emily whispered as she drifted to sleep. "My brave boy." Karen didn't reply. She simply held her daughter's hand and brushed the dog's fur, tears falling silently down her cheeks. Rex had done what no one else could. He had faced fear, violence, and danger, and he had done it without hesitation. But even as peace settled in for the night, Detective Ramirez sat in his car, reviewing files. One attacker had been caught, yes, but the other was still out there. And he knew this wasn't over yet. 2 days passed in a haze of gratitude, police briefings, and visits from reporters, but the Carters remained tightly closed off from the world. They declined every interview, ignored social media messages, and asked friends to respect their privacy. Emily was home again, and Rex, though stitched and bruised, was recovering quickly. The town sent cards, stuffed animals, and even an oversized bag of Rex's favorite treats, but nothing seemed to erase the lingering fear that something was still unfinished, because it wasn't. The second man, the driver of the van, the one who had vanished into the woods, had not been caught. Despite increased patrols and neighboring county alerts, he had slipped through the cracks, leaving only a bloody jacket and tire marks behind. Detective Ramirez called often, providing updates, but the Carters could hear the frustration growing in his voice. Whoever these men were, they were experienced, calculated, organized. That third night, Karen stood in the living room, arms crossed, staring at the front door. Rex sat beside her, ears pointed and eyes focused. Outside, a light rain tapped against the windows, and thunder rolled far in the distance. Emily had finally fallen asleep upstairs, Rex having insisted on checking her room 3 times before settling downstairs with Karen. "She's safe now." Karen whispered, mostly to herself, but even as the words left her lips, she didn't believe them. Around midnight, the phone rang. Karen jumped, knocking over the mug of tea on the table. Her fingers fumbled as she answered. "Hello," silence, then a voice, low and cold. "Next time, the dog won't be there." The line went dead. Karen stood frozen, the receiver trembling in her hand. For a long second, all she heard was her own heartbeat. Then she turned to Rex, who was already on his feet, growling. They didn't wait. Karen grabbed her phone, her car keys, and woke Emily gently. "Sweetheart, we're going to the police station," she whispered. "Rex too, right now." Emily didn't argue. She saw the look in her mother's eyes, saw the tension in Rex's body, and knew enough to trust them. They were out the door in minutes, but someone had been watching. As Karen backed the car out of the driveway, headlights flared down the street. A black SUV began to move, slowly at first, then gaining speed. Karen slammed her foot on the gas. Emily cried out in the back seat, and Rex barked sharply. The chase began. Karen tore through the quiet streets of Brookside, adrenaline pumping as the SUV gained on them. She took sharp turns, ran stop signs, weaving through neighborhoods and praying not to crash. The police station was 10 minutes away, too far. She needed to lose them. "Mom," Emily cried. "He's getting closer." "I see him," Karen shouted, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, but Rex moved before she could react. The big dog lunged forward from the back seat, paws braced against the dashboard. He barked furiously, almost as if he understood the urgency, the danger. The SUV behind them suddenly pulled up beside them on a narrow road. Karen screamed as it swerved, trying to ram her off the road. Then Rex acted. With a sudden snap of instinct, he hit the power window button with his paw, rolling it down. The moment the glass lowered, Rex leapt halfway out, barking with primal force. The driver of the SUV flinched, just enough to veer wide. His tires hit the curb, and the SUV lost control, spinning, crashing through a fence and into a shallow ditch. Karen didn't stop. She drove until the blue and red lights of the police station finally appeared through the mist and headlights. They burst through the doors moments later, soaked, panting, and wild-eyed. "They just tried to run us off the road," Karen shouted. "I got the license plate." Ramirez was already up from his desk. Within the hour, the man had been arrested. His fingerprints matched the ones found on the van at the park. He had a record, a long one. He was tied to a known child trafficking ring that had operated across 3 states. The plan to take Emily had been deliberate. They'd seen her walking alone, targeted her, waited, and failed because of Rex. When the news broke, it spread like wildfire. "Brave dog saves girl a second time," the headlines read. The town of Brookside held a community event in Rex's honor 2 weeks later. Though the Carters were reluctant, they agreed to attend, if only to help the community find closure. Emily stood on a small stage, holding Rex's leash proudly as the mayor handed her a plaque. "Today, we honor not only a brave dog," the mayor said, his voice echoing over the crowd, "but a family who never gave up and a town that stood together in the face of danger. Rex is not just a dog. He's a guardian, a hero, and a reminder that love and loyalty can save lives." Applause erupted. Children waved handmade signs, and someone passed Rex a large bone wrapped in a red ribbon. But for Emily, none of it mattered more than knowing she was safe. Later that night, back at home, she curled up on the living room floor with Rex. The house felt warm again, peaceful. For the first time in weeks, the shadows didn't seem quite so dark. "I love you, Rex," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. Rex gave a contented sigh and rested his head on her lap, eyes closing. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Life in Brookside slowly returned to normal. But the story of the brave German shepherd who saved a little girl, twice, was etched into the town's memory forever. And as Emily drifted off to sleep, Rex stayed where he always belonged, between her and the world.